Okay, so it's 3 o'clock on the dot. So let's start again. And for our next session on agroecology as a practice, I'll hand over to Walter Gove-Nika from Rescope, and he's based in Zambia to moderate the session. Over to you, Walter.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Good afternoon, everyone. And we are going to look into the issue of agroecology as a practice. I think we have been reminded throughout the webinar that we can approach agroecology from different angles. So the aim of this session is to focus on agroecology as to have a couple of videos that will show some of the practices that are involved. But before that, I want to just give a brief overview or introduction to agroecology as a practice. And what I would like to emphasize is that when we look at agroecology as a practice, it's not about just using some techniques of helping our production to prosper and to thrive. Agroecology as a practice goes beyond just using a variety of techniques. It is more of a lifestyle. I think method earlier on hinted about that because agroecology practices should be rooted. Worldview should inform your agroecological practices. And therefore, agroecological a mindset shift. I think we are all familiar with the conventional mindset, which is driven by profit, among other few principles. But with agroecology, we are looking at a worldview which is about connecting with the Mother Earth and keeping those connections, nurturing the connections with Mother Earth and all that it has. So agroecological practice also, what I want to point out is that it's not for, let's say, other people. Agroecology practice should begin with yourself. You should be part of the practice. So that means in agroecology practice, role modeling is very, very important. All of us should walk the talk, not to be expecting the so-called farmers to be implementing agroecological practices when we are ourselves distanced from it. So it should be a personal journey where we all try to play our role in taking care of the one planet that we have. And the worldview is about oneness with the ecosystem. It's we should not separate ourselves from the ecosystem that we serve and the ecosystem that provides us with services. So we should really see ourselves as one part, an integral part of the ecosystem. So interconnectedness has been highlighted throughout this webinar and the previous one. It's really at the heart of agroecology practice. Then second from last, I'd like to say that we can look at agroecological practices at various scales. So you can practice it in your kitchen garden. You can have an agroecological practice that is centered around your kitchen garden. You can have agroecological practice as a community, a village, or an institution. Yeah, so the concept I was sharing now is about the various scales at which we can have agroecological practice. So it can start from as small as a kitchen garden, and we can go all the way to a big farm. We can go all the way to an institution like a school. We can have agroecological practice at a village level, and even to have a watershed or a landscape level practice of agroecology. So it can be done at various scales. Then finally, I would like to say that because agroecological practice is so broad, we need to have entry points. So there are various entry points into the agroecological practice. And the videos that we are going to watch very soon, they are examples of some of these entry points that we use to get communities, farmers, start practicing agroecology because it's such a holistic field that we have to start somewhere. And so we should have entry points which help us to engage and to deepen our practice over time. I think it, earlier on, John Wilson mentioned the advanced agroecology, which should be our aim. But to get started, we can find whatever suitable entry point. For example, we are going to watch a video on soil health from BioWatch. We are going to have a video on organic manures. So all this can be seen as entry points. And then once we get started, we can broaden and deepen our agroecology practice. So by way introduction, that is all from me for now. So I'm going to introduce the various videos that Nicholas will help us to show. And the first video is from SKY, the Seed and Knowledge Initiative, and it is on organic fertilizers, biofert. We'll have the pleasure of watching this over the next 8. May you kindly share your screen and
One of the major challenges facing African farmers is low soil fertility. To address this, farmers are increasingly encouraged to buy expensive inorganic fertilizers, which push up the price of food production, pollute the environment, increase greenhouse gas emissions, and do nothing to increase soil fertility in the long term. But recently, African farmers have been introduced to an alternative: homemade biofertilizers, pioneered in Cuba during the 1990s, are being brought to Africa through the work of a Colombian farmer, scientist and trainer. These biofertilizers are strengthening the alternatives already being developed and spread throughout Africa by African farmers. All over the world, the practice of agroecology, or organic agriculture, has suffered from a lack of support from science. The scientific world has largely put its backing behind industrial or chemical agriculture. It is time this changed as we look for a sustainable way to farm that benefits farmers properly and produces nutritious food. September 2018, something unusual happened in Chinika as the university came to the village. 40 farmers and extension workers from Chinika and other wards in Gutu district joined 30 farmers and NGO officers from across Zimbabwe and South Africa to train in fermented biofertilizer production. The participants also learnt some of the science behind these organic fertilizers in a course that constantly mixed theory and practice. The training was organized and supported by the Seed and Knowledge Initiative and followed a similar event at Kasisi Agricultural Training Center in Zambia the previous week. The aim was to share experiences from smallholder farmers in South America. The two trainers, Juan Fran Lopez and Carlos Pons, are both students of the Colombian farmer, scientist and trainer Jairo Restrepo, who has been a forerunner in the research and promotion of fermented biofertilizers.
Simplify the microbes. Most of them go.
Juan Fran and Carlos explained in careful and simple detail why microbes are so important for farmers. Microbes are tiny creatures that cannot be seen with the naked eye. They include many species of fungi and bacteria, as well as other species with more unusual names. We don't need to know their names to work with them.
So I say that it's important to spray everywhere, the leaves, the trunk, but it's very important to have organic matter. The organic matter is the house for the microbes.
We can go into a naturally wooded area and collect microbes from just above the soil and just below the leaf cover. This is where they flourish. Why is a natural forest or woodland so healthy and stable? Largely because of the work of these trillions of tiny creatures constantly working to keep it that way. And they've been doing it for billions of years. Students at the Chinika workshop learned how to multiply these native microbes by mixing them with molasses or sugar and bran and packing the mixture tightly into a barrel where they are left for a month. The students learned how to use this abundance of microbes to make a fermentation full of minerals, vitamins, amino acids, hormones, and more. They learned what happens during a fermentation, how it starts as an alcoholic ferment and then becomes a lactic one because of the milk that is put into the mixture. And all the time during the fermentation, nutrients are being produced. All in all, they learnt over 20 recipes to strengthen what they are already doing in organic farming.
With potassium, molybdenum, cobalt, so I can put.
Morning sessions in the classroom explaining the science of microbes, minerals and ferments were followed by practicals in the late morning and afternoon. These practicals included how to make a quick maturing compost-like mixture called bokashi that is ready in 12 to 15 days. Bokashi is also a fermentation made with a variety of materials along with yeast and molasses or sugar. The heat is turned daily and the temperature carefully controlled. Practicals also included how to turn bones into a substance that can feed plants, much needed phosphorus. The Chinika participants learnt how to make lactic acid bacteria, or LAB as it's known, from milk and rice water. LAB can be used in many situations to speed up decomposition. It costs virtually nothing to make and anyone can do it. They learned how to coat seeds with a mineral mix, as well as how to use a hormone mix to encourage plant growth. They also learned how to make and store various brews that can help farmers with pest management. One of these, known as apichi, is made from chilies, garlic, ginger and alcohol. It can be stored for a long time and used when needed. Another pesticide which shows promise in controlling fall armyworm is cooked using basic soap and ash. One evening the participants drank a little local brew and celebrated with song and dance. Above all, this training was about bringing science to the farmers. For too long, science has been something that happens in laboratories and benefits large companies. Let's bring science back to the farms. Let scientists and farmers work together in a way that mimics nature and creates a healthy and productive farming environment. Let's use science along with the vast amount of local knowledge that is everywhere but often ignored to create a modern 21st century agriculture that enriches the environment for our children rather than destroying it, while producing a diversity of food rich in nutrients.
Thank you very much, Nicholas, for sharing the video. I think we should realize that have been presented in this video help us to connect science with agroecology, because often sometimes people brush off agroecology as just going backwards, but we can see from the making of biofertilizers and understanding them that there's a lot of science that we apply in this, so that's useful. But overall, we should realize that biofertilizers are just a transition measure, because we are in a situation where our soils are heavily degraded, and we need to bring them back to life, and the biofertilizers are one of the tools that we need to bring our soils back to life. So a very, very useful aspect of agroecology that we need to do as we build up our soils so that they can become more fertile, and in the long run we might not need to be making the biofertilizers once we regain the soil balance. Thank you very much. We'll have to some time to discuss at the end, So now we'll move on to from BioWatch. Thank you, Lawrence, for working on this and this video, which is one of the entry points that we can use to get people engaged in agroecology. So we'll ask Nicholas to share the video from BioWatch on soil health. The video was taken in KwaZulu-Natal with farmers that BioWatch is working with. So I'll leave you to enjoy the video.
Greetings to everyone, all the practitioners and activists. I am presenting today the how to improve the soil techniques for infertile soils, those soils that have been destroyed by improper use of industrial agricultural practices to make it so healthy. So the topic today is healthy soils for the health of the crops, animals, and people. On your far left image slide, you can see how is the soil being improved on the landscape. And the next slide is talking about the improper use of industrial agriculture as an impact of using that methods to become unhealthy soils. You can see how soils has been depleted and soil erosion and the environment and the seas, all the soils are washed to the seas. I'm sharing here where BioWatch works. BioWatch has got 4 themes: biodiversity, food sovereignty, agroecology, and social justice. And we are also showing examples of healthy soils in the Northern Natal based on the practices of BioWatch supported agroecological farmers for 8 communities. Here I'm showing that many of the farmers with whom BioWatch works were displaced to their current locations, which are mostly not suited to agriculture. These places are dry, often in shallow and rocky soils. In the picture here is the family of Mrs. Simieni homestead in Ichaneni. You can see how dry the land, the soil, and the area it is, and the landscape. This one is showing what is a good soil, that we are saying this healthy soil and water management and conservation are also interlinked. So healthy soil is a sponge, it's a living sponge that holds moisture and make use of scarce water, but also save stormwater. These soils are safely slow, capture and store water in the soil for slow release to plants and to maintain in the underground water table and soil life. What is it that builds the soil? Obviously, building the soil fertility, you will need to have a diverse organic materials that is gonna be improving soil life. And these organism processes are changing minerals and microbes available to plant food. You can see how these arrows are interlinked to show that from organic matter up until all the underground microorganisms are in process to make this plant food available. This is also a typical example of an interlinked practices enhancing water conservation and soil fertility. At a household food gardens, we capture soils are made to capture water from the runoff around the buildings into downslope fertility beds, deep trenches, several double digging beds, and single digging are constructed. Added fertility through a bed compost, you can see in the middle there, as well as compost teas, and on the edge of the garden, you can also see that some pigeon peas plants. All these are important when you plan and design your gardens, as well as to make soak pits on your pathways, and you stagger your plot so that there's no runoff, and also you try to have a lot of deep mulch cover to the ground. This is also another practices of bigger land that you make you make water conservation on rain-fed fields, and you build in your soil fertility through using or within the soils, and also make planting basins as a planting station, and that is enriched with manure, compost and mulch. You can see on the left is planting station, and on your left is soils as well as the soak pits for water harvesting. I'm also showing that there is practices that are enhancing water conservation and soil fertility in a diverse intercrop planting guilds using 3 sisters, that is maize, pumpkins, and beans. And on your right, you can see pigeon peas planted on the soil mold below the soak pits. And this is a result of what has been done in a previous layer where you made the planting stations. You can see how the land and the crops has improved. Also, when the soil has been improved, you could see better crop performance and the deep soils underground, and then the root zones are improved. And you can see how the leguminous, cover crops, and green manurings are improving. Such practices are great to make it very possible. This slides is showing the practices of building the soil fertility through using the bio inputs that we have been just introduced for the last 2 years, where we use fermented teas, bokash, and some other biofertilizers to enhance the microbes and minerals in the soil. So this also helps to improve the underground soil life. This one is also an example of integrating of livestock as a source of animal manure, particularly the small stock, which plays very vital role in the building of soil fertility. The smaller the animal, the higher the plant nutrients. This is a chicken tractor at a particular household. You can see how the soil looks like after it has been introduced. To complete my presentation, I would like to take this chance to say thank you for listening, and I hope we're going to try these practices. It's some of many methods. There are many more methods that we need to experience and practice and experiment. You can't just take one and you say it's working, but it should be multifunctional practices, and then your soil will be improved. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Lawrence, which I think is building on the earlier one on biofertilizers, and you have provided us with the connections between the aspects, for example, the water, linking that to improvement of our soils, and you have also showed and explained how other ways of building on the health of our soil. So thank you very much, Lauren.
Yes, thanks. I just wanted to come in before you go to the next presentation, because actually it's linking the two. Because of time, we're going to skip the video on green manure and cover crops that Tsuro produced some months ago. It's a very interesting video though, so I'm going to put a link on the chat box if people want to watch it later, and we also put it on the Sky YouTube channel for people to watch it. But it links actually very well the biofertilizer, the other soil health practices that Lawrence just shared, with the next presentation, which is more about water harvesting, because green manure and cover crops is actually helping with both, like improving the health of your soil, but also increasing its water retention capacity and reducing evapotranspiration. So it would have been good to watch it. Unfortunately, we don't have time, but I'll put the link to the video in the chat box. Thanks, Walter.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. I think we will move on now to look at water harvesting, the experiences from Poret in Chimanimani district in eastern Zimbabwe. And Julius Pitti will take us through these experiences. So we'll ask Nicholas again to share his screen and show us the work of Poret from eastern Zimbabwe on water harvesting. So let us sit back and enjoy.
To speak about water harvesting in Chaseyama, Chimanimani district, Zimbabwe, and it's presented by Julius Pitti, the director for Poret. Next. So here we are in Africa, and you can see from the blue arrow, that's where Zimbabwe is, and pointing at Chimanimani district. That is in Africa, and then Manicaland province in Mutare, that's our capital city here. That's where we are in Chimanimani district, and our capital city, of course, is Harare. Yeah, and the second one, Bulawayo. And now in region 5, that's where Chaseyama is found. It's quite hot. Now you can see, as it is region 5, it has got a soil which is very sandy and very much susceptible to erosion. And you can see from the picture, and we were moved there in 1996 to stay in Chaseyama, and as our homestead, we demonstrated a few things that made the Poret registered in 2006. And this is the semi-arid region where we are actually working on 3 wards in Chimanimani district on this very much hot agroecological regions. The average rainfall 300 to 400 millimeters, which sometimes fall just in one stop. And you can imagine how much erosions will really happen through that. With this very high temperature that we experience, this makes it very difficult to grow food. So you can see from the pictures. Now our story at Poret now in Chaseyama, there's lots of different kind of conflicts in the land management and also the erosions. And mostly smallholder farmers survive on subsistence farming on sand, poor, and unfertile soil that you have already seen. So we work in 24 villages under Chief Mutambara in Chimanimani district. The reason for water harvesting is for domestic purpose, for cooking, bathing, drinking. We also do it for agricultural purposes, for crop animal production. We also do it for charging underground water table, so that the water table is raised to a certain level so that the springs and water sources will provide water to everybody. We also do it to reduce soil erosion, improve hydro cycle, so that the water cycle, when it is very efficient, then we can actually bring the rainfall patterns to be normal and predictable. So if we work together as a district country, in the future, we will be able to affect the rainfall patterns in our country and probably in the Southern Africa. And then also to create this microclimate and that will support the microorganisms so that they can thrive well and do work for us on the soil. Increase the growing season for croppings, because once we have got lots of moisture on the ground, then we are able to really grow more and more crops, even like those water-loving crops. So we also recharge springs and wetlands. That will be actually like a resource in terms of energy and moisture. So, however, the principles of water harvesting, we have to go where the erosion starts and really manage from there. Once we are able to see the source, then we are able to manage the because then we understand the catchment area where the water is coming from. So we should slow it down so that at least we slow it down so that it sinks. We spread the water so that once we spread it, it reduces its effort and then it gathers. It falls underground and goes into the sinks on the ground. So we should save the little water that you have. Of course, thin it down, store it, so that this water can be used for future and for a bit longer time. And also, access routes should not lead straight down slopes, but floor contour lines, roads, pathways, because usually in the community setups, the paths are usually created into gullies where a lot of water will be just eroding and take lots of massive, also livestock creates lots of tracks that are unpredictable and very dangerous and destroy the environment. So factors to consider when designing your water harvesting system. You must know the purpose, why you want to do that. And you must understand your catchment area and the type of vegetation that you have so that they can sink. So different type of vegetation needs different types of design in order to really withhold the water. You also have to think of the gradient slope of the land that you are talking about. When the gradient is too slope, then it means you might need to have more structures or more contour lines that can block the water. The soil type is also very crucial because then sand loam soils can be easily eroded. It's lighter when it is raining. The annual rainfall, you should put it in your mind as well, because the more it is raining, probably the more the erosion could also, and also more structures you need to make those structures that can withhold these storms and actually sink the water down. You must think of storage facilities because there is no need to harvest water when you are not able to store it. You have to store it for future use and then period of utilization. Those are the factors that once you understand these factors and they work with your purpose of a project, then you have got a big reason why you should do effective water harvesting systems that can actually be designed according to your initiatives to suit your own purpose on your landscape. Now, we see at Poret we have these natural gullies that has been formed on the map, but we do demonstrate this water harvesting on our learning center. The aim is to develop a working water harvesting system that serves as a demonstration site for communities in the area. So you see some of these pictures are taken from the examples that we have already met. Our next slide. You can see people are digging with their hands, and now this other picture shows when the water has been accumulated in this kind of designs on these 20 hectares. It's a big design, really. So you can appreciate this is one of the swell, which the picture on your left-hand side is the swell without water, and the same swell with water now on the right hand. So when it is raining, you see water is being harvested that way, and the water is sinking underground to give moisture on the trees and plants below. Now this is how we construct the dams. We construct the dams by just putting the soil across the gully and then put some rocks. And we also use our land for neighbors' cattle to graze in, because the grazing of cattle can be actual water harvesting system at the same time using its hooves to reclaim the land. We use also A-frame apart from other complicated designs that you may think of. The A-frame is just two sticks that are tied with another third stick to measure lines of same height. And this is the cost that we do to train farmers so that they are able to make their own contours in their own fields. And then this is how the contour look like when it is done. Okay. We also harvest water in different ways. We also harvest water from the roof, and this is the Faro tank, which is been built with just a little bit of fence and then puts cement. It consumes less cement and material to build, and then you can harvest water from your roof. So you can see now that for our community, 28 farmers in 9 villages in Ward 2 and have dug about 5,131 meters of swales, and 16 farmers in 6 villages in Ward 3 have dug 2,695 meters of swales, and 11 farmers in 3 villages in Ward 5 have dug 2,610 meters of swales. These swales can harvest a total of 3,128,850 liters of water. So this is an amazing water that we can harvest within one storm if it will be raining in our region. We thank you very much for listening to this one, because then water harvesting, it has something to do with the agroecological designs that really get food on the table for everybody. And this is one set of design, which is water harvesting, that we can speak about to support farmers on the dry land. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope you'll have enough time to discuss and chat.
Thank you very much, Julius, for the beautiful presentation. And because we live in water deficit landscapes, I think all of Southern Africa, we really need to do a lot more on water harvesting so that we can retain water on our landscapes. Thank you very much, Julius, for sharing the experiences from Poret in Eastern Zimbabwe. We'll now move on to the final presentation before we go into plenary. The next presentation is from Ukuvuna. John Nzira is going to lead us in looking at natural pest and disease management. So, yeah, over to you, Nicholas, for the next presentation. And
today we are going
John
to talk about pest and disease management, including weeds in the system of agriculture. Pests are insects that are coming into the garden and eat our crops. These are insects that are not invited or not introduced into the system. They come voluntarily because they like certain plants in the system. And diseases also, they come in different forms, like fungus, bacteria, and viruses. And all these, they come in the garden and attack our crops. That's why we see sometimes our crops are weak, or sometimes the crop is just affected in the soil and then it dies back. We also have weeds. Weeds are voluntarily plants that come in the system, and when they come in the system, they just grow together with our crops. And we never invited that type of thing into the garden or into the system. So those things need to be managed. Hence, agriculture has been there for thousands of years. And our ancestors, our forefathers have been practicing these systems that I'm going to talk about. But we are not saying these systems are very old. They are, people have been practicing for many years, and they've been creating sustenance in it, self-reliance out of it. The danger is when the industrial agriculture came into play, where in the 1960s, after the Second World War, the chemicals that were used in the industrial, World War, Second World War, were converted to kill pests. That's why you see when people are spraying pests, they put a mask like they are fighting with a small tiny insect. They are killing that small tiny insect. To kill that tiny small insect, they use masks and prevention because they know the chemical that they are using to kill this, they can even kill them. So that disturbs, that is confusing our way of living with nature, our way of living in harmony with nature. But however, we cannot concentrate or pay attention to them. Let's focus now on how we can go back to nature, how we can work with nature. So the entry point is to build soil. So if you build soil, what is connected to building soil? You see this one, it's very good soil that is coming from the farm. And it's coming from my garden. And after building the soil, it's one indicator that you are loving nature. So when you build soil, you have healthy soil. And at the end of the day, you have healthy plants. Can you see? You have healthy plants that are growing in the system. It's because you have good soil. The next step is to have ground cover. So with ground cover, you see, in my garden, we have mulch. You cover the ground. You can use any organic matter to cover the ground. You can use also the live ground cover. The live ground cover include things like lima bean, dolichos lablab. They are ground covers. And at the end of the day, they control pests, they control insects, they control weeds. So we invest a lot of money to control these weeds and the pesticides and pests and control the diseases. But there are natural means to control this. And the other third element that we need to care about is the diversity of crops in the field. And the diversity of the crops in the field, it's all about planting different species in the field that are of multi-purpose in the garden. And when you start developing this, then at the end of the day, you are able to produce different species all the time in a small piece of land. Then when you produce this, you do not just produce. This diversity is about selecting plants that are of multi-purpose and that can help in the development or in the maintenance of the pest control of the garden. The pest control and maintenance of the soil is very important in a natural way. So, for example, here we have this example here where we have cancer bush. This is a cancer bush plant that is planted on the boundary. Can you see? It's planted on the boundary. It's acting like a buffer zone. This buffer is helping the bean to grow. You can see here we have lots of bean and it's giving us beans. Can you see? It's beans. And we have spinach on the boundary there. And this is the cancer bush. It's a pest repellent because it's so bitter. When insects taste this one, they run away. The diversity itself, it can be created by planting other species on the boundary. Like you can plant rosemary. This is rosemary. You can plant rosemary on the boundary. You can plant plants like yarrow planted in the boundary. Also, certain plants like garden rue. You can see this is garden rue. It can be planted on the boundary as well to repel some pests. You can plant lemon verbena on the boundary. You can also plant Lipia javanica, Musuzungwani or Muzumbani. You can plant Artemisia afra on the boundary. It also helps in all this, in repelling pests. Further, you can create this alley cropping with the species like fennel. And as you see, fennel can attract predators in the system. And the predators, wasp, they come into the flower. And when they come into the flower, they eat the nectar but at the same time they look for aphids and other insects. As you develop and attracting predators in the field, it is important that you can bring different flowers in the garden. For example, here we have calendula in the garden planted on the boundary, and we have anasadondia planted on the boundary, and we have the coriander planted in the boundaries as well to repel pests and attract predators. But eventually, when we have this in place, you need to make the teas that you can prepare from different plants, that you can mix and make tea and spray on a particular plant or particular pest that is attacking a particular plant. You can make this out of the different species in the garden, like garden rue that I was talking about, like the msuzungwanis, like the roots of Wabegia salutalis, the roots of rhubarb. Crush them and boil them in water and spray. Add a little bit of soap and then spray in your garden. That can control pests in the system. And all this, it is a way of bringing nature home. It is a way of taking care of our environment. It is a way of sustaining ourselves, maintaining ourselves within the agroecological principles. Once we start using synthetic chemicals, they are not destroying you alone, but they are destroying the environment. The leaching of these chemicals, they go into the water. Water table is polluted and the rivers are polluted. And the manufacturing of the synthetic chemicals, they are even polluting the environment in total as a whole. And how can we stop it? Is by practicing the natural way of farming. And the natural way of farming, it will provide us with healthy plants like what you see here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, for sharing your experiences on natural pest and the disease control. I think very rich presentation. So we will have some time for discussion, but not much as we are running behind time. And I've noticed that Stephanie has shared a link to the video from Tsuro Trust on green manures and cover crops, which you can share at your pleasure. So we have had a set of interesting presentations and videos, which should now form the basis for our discussion. So feel free to raise your hand and to make your contributions, which can be an aspect of clarification, a comment, an example of a further example of what has been showed. So let's have some discussion, and Stephanie will guide us in terms of timing, but we can start having some discussion. So if you are ready, just raise your hand, then we can get you to make your contribution on the agroecology as a practice. So I think we have seen the various practices and entry points. Yes, you can go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see where to raise my hands. Not sure what's happening with my technology, but I'd like to also acknowledge and thank the last presentation around the pesticides and the repellents. because I think we appreciate that, like, the fertilizers or biofertilizers will enhance the soil fertility, but we still have that problem of pesticides and diseases. And I think that is an area where we probably need more information to be shared in terms of the bio, combating diseases and pests using biotechnologies.
Yes, thank you very much for that question. And yeah, before the presenters comment, I would like also just to say that the various topics on which we have had the presentations on the e-practices, they are also interconnected. So, for example, soil health on its own is a fundamental factor that helps us in controlling pests and diseases. So I think biologists are increasingly becoming aware of the importance of building strong immune systems for our crops as a way of making sure that we don't suffer losses from pests and diseases. So having a healthy soil on its own goes a long way into producing healthy crops that can be able to withstand pests and diseases. I don't know if John would like to come in further on this.
For me, I think it will be great to have questions and comments on some from participants. Then probably we can look into how we can respond at the end.
Thank you very much, John. So any other question or comment or example which we would like to share with everyone?
Yes, Walter, there is Rikai in the chat box. He's saying that he has a question.
Okay, go ahead, Rikai.
Hi, Walter. Thanks for taking questions. I think I have two questions. First of all, thanks so much for the presentations, very rich. So my first question is about the participation of different groups. I think from some of the videos and presentations, I've noticed the participation of rural people and also the participation of women. And my question is, are there examples of the role and participation of youth? And if so, if colleagues could share those examples. And then I think another thing that I've picked up really from all the different presentations is about the role of natural systems, and that in these agroecological systems where we are promoting diversity and biodiversity. And so the question is, does a system have to produce food to be agroecological if there's so many dimensions of it which are just sort of natural system dimensions? Is it really contingent on producing food?
Yeah, thank you, Rikai, for sharing those two questions. So maybe we can take one or two more before we respond to the panel can respond to the questions. So there is one question already in the chat box, which is about the techniques of combating weeds. So that question is also noted, which was put in the chat box. So anybody else? I don't see any other hand up.
Yes, so perhaps people can start answering the questions that Rikai asked, and then it will give time for the other people to formulate their questions.
Thank you, Steph. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. Just want to respond on the participation of women and even the participation of youth in the agroecological practices. For example, I'm based in South Africa. I'm working most in Limpopo. We have a database of 6,000 farmers who are following our programs, and they are practicing and growing food in an agroecological way. And out of 6,000, we are talking of 80% of the people participating are women. And more women, they are more engaged into food production in an agroecological way, because they know at the end of the day what is the nutritional needs of the family. So they actually address the nutritional need and the needs of the families through establishing agroecological projects or gardens. The other element that he asked about the natural systems or the coping nature. The agroecological system is about coping nature, but when we cope nature, we bring nature home by designing and by analyzing species that can give you the food you require as a family. So if, for example, you visit my garden, I have a wide variety of species, over maybe 1,000 species here in my garden, and some are indigenous, but they provide me either with indigenous fruits, or they provide with medicine. And most of it is also addressing the food requirements of my family, and also the food that I know it's good for the markets. So I can be able to sell some of the products that I have here. And this is all about careful designing, careful thinking of how you can develop agroecological systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I don't know if any panelists would like to add to what John has said. And in the meanwhile, in the chat box, we have another question on combating termites.
Yeah.
So, yes,
yeah, maybe
Stephanie?
I think there was another aspect of Rikai's questions that John can also talk to. It's the youth aspect, and to what extent, you know, the mobilization of the community that we're doing involve the youth. And I think Ukuvuna, you have quite some experience in that, and then I can add on to that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. And as I say, over 80% are women, and within that, we have over 60% of youth participating in the program. Mainly youth, you need to understand youth, mainly they need to see the business out of what we are teaching. If you create a system that generates income, youth able to sell their products from the system, then they can participate willingly and also expand the project. And also, some of the youth, if you engage with crafts and you link it into a qualification of training, youth tend to participate more. And if it's related to their needs, then youth participate more. And that's what is happening in our programs here within Ukuvuna. There was another question also about combating weeds. Weeds, it's a lack of, if you have lots of weeds in your garden or in your project, your farm, it means lack of diversity. If you design your farm properly with a good diverse, you have vertical plants and horizontal plants, horizontal plants, they cover the ground, like ground cover or green manure cover crops. Then there are no weeds that come into the ground that is covered. Also, if you practice mulch, dry grass in the garden on the farm, there are no weeds that come. You weed once, but the commercial farmer usually they weed 4 times. In this case, you only weed once, and then you have minimum weeds that come in the system. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John.
And Walter,
thank you, John.
maybe, yeah, Walter, maybe you can also answer the youth question, because Rescope is all about working with schools. So how do you even mobilize at that young age about agroecology? So maybe, and BioWatch also, I know you have experience with engaging the youth.
Yes, thank you, Stephanie. We do have a network of organizations in Southern and Eastern Africa that working with young people for the schools and colleges, permaculture programs, core programs. We see schools as a very important entry point into promoting agroecology in communities, because young people in schools are very eager learners. They are very sharp, and they easily pick up the agroecological practices. And once they get it, they really run away with it. So we feel that it is quite important, the youth being the next generation of farmers and leaders. We feel that it's very important to engage them, and we have developed the approaches for working with young people in schools, as well as the out-of-school youth that we also engage in through their local school. So, yes, I think that's a very important question, because the majority of our populations are the young people. So it is quite important to engage young people. Maybe I can also take time to just comment a bit about the termites that there's a question on termites that has been put in the chat. And termites are really our friends as farmers. I think if you observe carefully, termites actually feed on dead organic matter. And when you find the crops being affected by termites, it's usually because something else has killed the crop, and then the termites just come to feast on the dead food. So we should not just treat all the insects that we see in our crops as enemies. Some of them are actually our friends. Like termites are very good for converting organic matter into fertilizer, and they focus on helping the dead organic matter to decompose. So we really recommend that we work with termites rather than against them. Any other panelists would like to come in?
Walter, I'd like to add on the question around do we need agroecology if it's all just natural? And just to say that while we're very strongly emphasizing traditional knowledge and the need to relearn what we're losing, we're not saying that it's only that. And that's why the session looked at the science of agroecology as well as the practice, because there is room for improving and for experimenting as farmers Just taking, for example, cover crops as an example, to find out and try out in the field as farmers which cover crops work in your context and which ones develop the soil better and encourage predators better in your system, for example. That is something that you can do in your spot. So there's a lot of room for that kind of science where it's participatory and interactive to improve the system and to learn from other experiences and bring that to build on the traditional knowledge. So agroecology is taking it that step forward and integrating the science with the traditional knowledge that we have and taking it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I can also comment on the aspect of whether agroecology is always about food. I think when we practice agroecology, we talked about it being more of a lifestyle, a whole systems approach. And so we should design our production system so that it can go some way in meeting some of our basic needs. And I think food is a daily basic need, and especially in the times where we are living, I think it's very important for people to grow their own food, to eat some of their own food. And so when we are designing our production system, it really is important to have food elements on the in our designs. Okay, anybody else? I don't know how much time we have for Stephanie.
Yeah, I think it's time to round up this session as well. We also wrap up and close the webinar. So Walter, any last words you'd like to say to finish this session?
Thank you, Stephanie. And first of all, I think it has been quite a rich session, and I would like to thank all the presenters for contributing the wealth of experience that we have had. So I'd like to appreciate the presenters and the experiences that have been shared. And to all of us, I would like us to be careful not to be like overwhelmed by agroecology, because when it is presented as a holistic approach, sometimes it's difficult to see where to start. So I would encourage people who would like to start to find an entry point that you feel most attracted to. Then you start, and as you start, you keep building on your experience, you keep learning, and then it's important to immediately practice what you learn. And with that, you then build your agroecology practice, you broaden it, and you deepen it, and eventually we can all grow in the practice of agroecology. So let us not get stuck in terms of where to start. You can start anywhere and build upon that through experience, through more learning, and also through sharing with other people. And I think as a movement, we need to be an active network so that we can keep supporting each other inspiring each other, encouraging each other in our journey. So I think we should see this as a journey. The important thing is to get committed, dedicated, and interested. Then we can build on whatever way we start. So thank you very much for this space, and thank you everyone for participation and contributions.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Walter, for moderating that session on AE as a practice. I think it was, yeah, very interesting indeed, and also quite a lot of engagement. So it's time now to come to the end of our event, way beyond the time, as you can see from the slide. But just a few minutes to wrap up properly, and Jackie's going just to share with us the main messages and highlights that she picked up from the 3 hours. And then, yeah, I'll just introduce the next webinar and also the preparation that we would like you to do for the next webinar. So over to you, Jackie.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks to everyone who's managed to stay on. I think I've certainly learned a lot today, and look forward to watching more of the videos. As a brief wrap up, I know we're way over time. Let's quickly look at the 5 agroecological principles which we started off with. And our group said there is a need to optimize nutrient flows. We should see soil as a living system. Nature is the best teacher. We need to create a give and take system. And good soil support plant life, which supports animal life. Then we went on to say that Shepard actually said that agroecological science from an agroecological perspective is about nurturing biodiversity and respect for all life forms. Then we had Precious, who gave key insights from the holistic management framework. They are that nature functions in wholes, not in parts. Brittleness means all environments are different. In grazing, time is more important than numbers, and livestock managed properly can heal the land. We then had a video from Method. He said that farmers have a holistic understanding of the connections between the cosmos and features on the farm. In Juanfran's video, he said that nutrition is diversity of a constant supply of organically synthesized elements. And then I'll wrap up with the video on biofertilizer, where someone said science has been confined to laboratories for too long. Let's bring science back to the farmer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for capturing the essence of what we wanted to share in this webinar, focusing on agroecology as a science and as a practice. And before I formally close, I just want to remind everyone that our third and last introductory webinar will take place on the 3rd of December, which is also a Thursday, and it will focus on the last pillar of agroecology, which is agroecology as a social movement. So it's an entire new angle to what agroecology is. As usual, we ask you to do a bit of preparation ahead of the presentations and the discussions. And basically, we are asking you this question, what is a social movement to you? If you've got any examples that you can think of, whatever level, what would you qualify as a social movement, be it small or big? And maybe yourself, you are or you have been part of a social movement. So just to do a bit of thinking of around that, and once again share with us in the form of written paragraphs or any other forms, photograph, drawing, recording, and send your input to Ruby, maybe just up until a few days before the event. So I will remind you of the homework in the email that I'm going to send straight after the webinar. But that's the homework. And it takes us to the end of our event today. And I just want to finish by saying thank you to everyone, to the presenters first and foremost, to the team, to all those who contributed some recording and some time for moderating, and also to all of you, the participants who actively participated and engaged the team, and also for your passions and understanding with regard to the extended time that it took us to introduce you to AE as a science and a practice. See you all at the next webinar on this 3rd of December. And in the meantime, I wish you all well. Take care, keep well, and safe and healthy. Thank you very much, everyone.